Excellent. Thank you so much for joining. And yeah, you're early, and it's 10 o'clock here. So what time is it there? Is it six? Is it 6 or 7?
7:03 right now.
Gotcha. I always get confused about the time change. Anyway, I'm going to just kind of introduce. My name is Radlin Mendoza. We have Dominique Sampson. We also have Cesar Chamorro from the West Coast. And we're discussing specifically the field office directors in Norfolk, their process. Well, actually, didn't talk about processing time, just an update we had. We had a virtual meeting with the field office director. I don't know if they do that where you are, Cesar. It's very helpful to get these virtual meetings with our field office director to let us know what's going on or what's not going on. So we're going to just kind of go through our notes of that discussion, and I'm just trying to see here if we're live. And again, appreciate it, Cesar, that you're here. And it's audio only, and it's kind of crazy, and and I think because I'm doing it through StreamYard, and whoever comes on can ask a question, and we'll see it. So Dom, do you want to get us started on just an overview of what happened at our virtual meeting with the field office director?
Sure. So it's basically just an update as to kind of the personnel that's in Norfolk right now and what's going on with adding additional potential officers to help with their caseload. They also went over kind of what's the backgrounds of some delays that could impact somebody's case at the Norfolk field office. They also updated their information about the COVID protocols that they have as well for people who have interviews there. And basically they just went over kind of, some questions that most people may have because there is kind of like a delay with everything that's going on with COVID and with immigration cases at this time.
Right. So the issue is that they're still experiencing these delays in Norfolk, and a lot of it is dealing with staffing and just people calling out. They do have these kind of COVID guidelines with regard to calling out and not coming to the office. And Dom, can you explain that a little bit? What Frank Reffel just talked about, and with regard to just the delays, and what we're experiencing in our office right now is sometimes our clients will go to an interview with our clients, and basically the officer like, okay, everything's good to go, you should be approved soon, or we're going to send you a request for evidence. And what happens is that doesn't happen for many months. And one of the questions that we had was, hey, what's up? Why, when the officer says this X is going to happen, it doesn't happen within, typically that happens within 30 days, 60 days, but we're out like 90, 120 days. Our clients are like, hey, what's going on? And I specifically asked the field office director, I was like, hey, what should we tell our clients? And Dom, do you want to talk about the answer that he gave?
He said the word patience a lot. So so he advised patience for people, and the main reason is really is COVID related. So if somebody might be sick or is feeling sick, per the regulations, they have to stay home. Or if somebody in their family or they've been in contact with does get sick or does get COVID, they don't want that person to come into the office and potentially, cause illnesses with the other coworkers. So that has greatly impacted the processing times of cases post interviews.
Right. And this basically with those officers who are supposed to be working on the decisions, they're getting pulled into 45 interviews, 751s, naturalization interviews, whatever that day may bring with that officer who called in was supposed to be working on. So I understand that. I definitely understand that situation. But Dom, you're right. It's just like, tell your clients to be patient. I mean, but we can all be but so patient, right? Because we've all been, some of these clients have been waiting for over a year. So that was, again, understandable, but probably not acceptable to our clients anyway, right? Caesar and Barbara, welcome. Thank you for joining us. We have Caesar, who is practicing out of the West Coast, and he's a paralegal for an immigration law firm in Los Angeles. And we have Barbara joining us from the Midwest, the great Midwest. Barbara Griffin, if you guys want to add anything with regard to what's going on where you guys are locally with processing times and things like that, I would love to hear your feedback. We are currently live streaming, so this is being recorded, and anything that you say is going to be live streamed. I'm supposed to tell you guys that before you get on stage and agree to talk. But so what about biometrics, Dom?
So right now, according to the field office director, that has really just kind of gone down to a trickle in terms of scheduling biometrics. So what they're trying to do now is trying to reuse any prior biometrics that the applicant may have to help with the processing of that case.
Yeah, that word was used. The word trickle was used with regard to biometrics. I mean, so I don't think there was a reason, right? I mean, with regard to biometrics, I don't understand the scheduling or what the holdup is. And I was having some tech issues that day, and I think that was one of the very first things that he talked about was the trickle. But did he talk about why that was, or was it just?
Well, he actually talked about it in a previous coffee with the field office director when they mentioned that they were only really able to schedule 8 to 10 biometrics appointments previously because of the regulations. They're only allowed up to 100 people in the building at one point in time. And because of, people calling in sick and having to basically kind of pitch in and do other things that that they weren't scheduled to do that day, somebody who could have been, supervising the biometrics appointment downstairs, they might have to be pulled in and do, work on interviews or work on other cases. So that has led to the trickle of biometrics appointments that we're seeing right now.
Great. It's all great news. Just kidding. And so from what we've been seeing, and Caesar and Barbara, love your feedback on this. Our office is still kind of processing cases like green card applications based on, marriage or family members. We're still seeing that at 6 to 8 months, right, Dom?
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that hasn't changed, thankfully. I think that the holdup is after the interview. By far, that's what we're kind of experiencing, was what we talked about before, and that is due to just the COVID call outs and the workforce just kind of being overtasked with switching gears and doing those interviews. But with regard to getting in front of an immigration officer, currently we're still seeing 6 to 8 months. What about you guys?
This is Caesar. So in terms of interviews, here in the Los Angeles field office, we're seeing them within a year. I think I've had a few clients already that we filed in February or after February 2020 that have gone to interview. Some of them even, I think, had 9 months for one of them that I calculated. So from data filing to green card in hand, about 9 months, approximately 1 year. There's really hasn't been any delays in issuing the green card. There is one case, but that one's got some special stuff going on. So generally speaking, here in LA, it's been about a year. A few other field offices about the same. I think we have one in Florida that they just they just got their green card last week, also within a year.
Thanks, Caesar. That's really, really helpful for anyone who might be wondering about their cases in LA and that general area. If you look at the processing times on USCIS website, our Norfolk field office is showing green card applications taking 12 to 29 months. And when people see that, they definitely freak out a little bit. But that's not really necessarily the actual time that it's going to take. And we're not seeing that. Those are just average time periods, and it's taking into account the shortest period of time and the very longest period of time to process a case. But one of the issues, and you guys know this as immigration practitioners, is that when the case does not fall outside of processing times, we can't do anything about it. Like, unless it falls outside of that 29 months, we can't do anything about it. Like, what's the remedy there, Dom? What did Frank say?
Well, one of the things that you can try to do is try to contact possibly a congressional inquiry, to do a congressional inquiry that could help out. And kind of worst comes to worst, you can also try to do an ombudsman's office request. So those also help out, but really congressional inquiry is probably one of the best ways to try to get some type of update on the status of your case as to what's happening.
But guys, can we do a congressional inquiry? I mean, is it going to do anything if it's within the processing times? What are we seeing on that? Anyone have any insight on that?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Hi, I have my son in the back seat, so you might hear some toys going off.
Thanks, Barbara.
But yeah, I always was under the impression that you couldn't do a request on any request unless it was outside those processing times, and that's really affecting a lot of my clients up here in the Cleveland field office.
Yeah, it's been the same for that's my experience as well. I haven't really tried it with an AOS case, at least not in a while. But whenever I do these congressional inquiries, stuff for like a EAD, and generally speaking, the congressman's office doesn't want to touch it because it's within processing times.
Yes, our hope is when we advise our clients to do that, is that it could kind of jiggle it a little bit and kind of rise to the surface, but we don't really know exactly what the remedy is. I mean, not the remedy, but the outcome. But I think it just gives our clients and us just something to do, because we can't do anything else. And I don't know if that's helpful or not. Dom, what have you been seeing with our congressional liaison requests?
Well, they're actually been pretty helpful. We usually contact Senator Tim Kaine's office here in the Hampton Roads area. So they've been pretty helpful with trying to get case status updates and sometimes expedite requests, usually for cases abroad. So we've seen that happen. But yes, so if it's within within the case processing times, they would usually come back and say, hey, we have to wait until it's outside processing times. But sometimes they actually kind of help with I guess, nudge immigration into actually kind of acting or doing something.
Right. Again, we have the situation where people are out because of COVID Frank mentioned hundreds of contractors were let go. So a lot of their assistants went by the wayside. And so they're just kind of really trying to work with, sounds like one hand tied behind their backs. And I mean, I really appreciated the conversation just because it's good to know. We emailed our clients and said, hey, this is what's happening. We just had the field office director meeting. And they just felt like, okay, at least we know something and the reason why. I mean, I don't know how long that's going to make our clients happy if no action is taken. But the fact of the matter is that, gosh, you can't make an inquiry outside of the processing times that it's not going to do anything. Frank kept talking about the contact center, using the contact center. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. He said that for info pass appointments, really the contact center or the call center, the 1-800 number is the gatekeeper to try to get an info pass appointment. And also, if for some reason the client is kind of feeling sick and is not able to attend, or they need to reschedule at the last minute, they suggested to contact the contact center as soon as possible prior to the actual interview time, so that they're aware of the situation, they're advised of the situation, and that the officer is aware that the applicant is unable to attend.
Right. And just the situation over the past 4 years, right? I mean, all of our methods of communicating with USCIS, just a person to person, or even an email to email, attorney email to the USCIS office, the local office, that just got cut off. I mean, it got cut off, and we're not able to communicate. And the good news from the meeting was that they may be bringing that email box back, which is awesome. And Cesar, and Barbara, I don't know if you guys in your local field offices ever had an email box, which was just for attorneys to make inquiries, but we did, and we actually got stuff done there, and it was just awesome. It was just very, very productive, and that went away during Trump era. So, did you guys have that?
I do know for Sacramento, they did have one. I used to work in Sacramento and dealt a lot with the Sacramento field office. They definitely had 2 emails, and we used those all the time to let them know, hey, we're not going to show up because X, Y, or Z. For LA, I'm sure they did. I just don't, I haven't really dealt with them. Well, sorry, just to clarify, I didn't deal with them prior to the emails going away, but I'm sure they did, and I wish that we did have those, because it's been very frustrating, trying to get anything done with any field office.
Right, for sure. And I mean, I'm just really hoping that they bring that back, because it was super helpful, and I think that it allowed us to just sort of be able to tell our clients something, that we did something, and that we would email them every 30 days. Remember that, Tom? Until we got some sort of a satisfactory answer.
I do have a question,
yeah,
if I may. Just going back to the biometrics issue, and how they're reusing biometrics. I mean, did they say how they're making that determination, like how old the biometrics need to be before they decide not to use them? Like, what are the grounds for them to do that? Because I do have somewhat of an interesting situation for a marriage-based case.
Yeah, I don't remember them going into kind of the requirements for them to reuse prior biometrics, only that, due to, scheduling, they are going to try to reuse prior biometrics as long as they're able to kind of limit the number of people entering the building. But I don't believe they went over the categories or requirements for using prior biometrics.
Okay. Yeah, the situation I have, just a quick recap. It's a marriage-based case filed with the Miami. Well, it's going to be interviewed at Miami, and this is filed in December last year. It took a while to get the receipts. He really wants to travel, and obviously USCIS will not approve any sort of work permit or travel permit until biometrics is complete, or even look at expedite requests. And somehow, even trying to figure out how to get my client his permit, USCIS said that they were willing to reuse my client's biometrics that were submitted like 10, 11 years ago for an unrelated case. It was a F1 student work permit, an OPT work permit. And so there was a lot of back and forth in trying to figure out if this is really true and if and when they were going to tell my client, like, hey, yes, we're going to reuse your biometrics because he really needs to travel. But lo and behold, he goes to InfoPass in Miami, and they're like, oh, we're just going to schedule it. So I was just kind of wondering, like, what the criteria is there when they determine how old, like, when they will recycle and how old they're willing to use.
Yeah, that's super interesting information. But yeah, the field office director did not go over, criteria or how old a prior biometrics in terms of, if they can reuse those. Only that if there is a prior biometrics, they're going to try to reuse it, just because of the here in Norfolk, they're a little bit undermanned, so they're trying to reuse biometrics so that the applicant doesn't have to come in for an appointment.
Got it. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I don't know why they just wouldn't be able to use any biometrics. I mean, it doesn't change, right? We just run it through. Be done with it.
Yeah, I agree.
11, 20, 30 years. Who cares? Run the biometrics. That's the way I see it. And maybe that's what they're doing. I just don't know. But that's something I never thought about. Like, what are the parameters? Do they have to be old or, I mean, not old, but do they have to be fairly recent or within the past 5 years? But why? It's always going to be the same as far as I know, unless you're, working with chemicals.
I mean, for sure, on some of my recently filed I-751 petitions, those I've seen them waive the biometrics requirement. They recycle the ones from the AOS, and depending on when we filed that, it's probably 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. So I at least know within 3 years they'll do it. At least for the I-751s. But this one was kind of an interesting situation, especially since, unless things were different 11 years ago, OPT work permits don't usually require biometrics. They don't even pay a fee for those. So it was just kind of surprising to me.
Yeah, surprising that they would say we're going to try to reuse those.
Yes, surprising to me that they said that they would try to reuse 10-year-old biometrics, especially for, well, maybe in his case it was required 11 years ago, but normally it's not required for an OPT work permit. So it's just overall, it was an interesting situation. Right.
Yeah. So another thing that's a little, just kind of coming off of the biometrics. Another thing that they were talking about is just how many people are allowed in the interview rooms, and was it max 3, Dom? Max 3 or 4?
Yes, so it's max 3 people. So it's the applicants plus 1 attorney, and then possibly another person if there's an interpreter that's needed. But if it's like, say, a marriage adjustment, then it's the couple plus the attorney. It doesn't count the officer. So really 3 to 4. Yeah.
Gotcha. And then an interesting thing was that, Frank said, if there's an interpreter, if your clients are bringing an interpreter, right? So there's you, the attorney, there's the couple, there's an interpreter, then there's the officer. They want the interpreter to be there in person, and they want the attorney to appear telephonically. Did I understand that correctly?
Correct, because they have to basically verify who this interpreter is in person and identify this person, and I guess check what the relationship is with the applicant or applicants.
Right. I think that our clients would probably. I mean, that makes it. It makes sense because just with regard to the communication, the language, with the interpreter being there, it's tough to do it on the phone. But I don't know if that were the choice. I think probably the clients would be like, we paid you guys a lot of money to be here, right? We want you to be sitting next to us and not on the telephone. And that's another thing with regard to the appearing telephonically. They're not going to allow attorneys to appear via WebEx. They want them to appear telephonically if they're, but not through WebEx. And we did have a situation, Dom, I don't remember if you know, one of our other attorneys, she said that they were interviewed, their client was interviewed by WebEx in the building. And it was a naturalization interview. I think they were just kind of testing it out, which I thought was kind of interesting. Do you remember Sarah talking about
Correct.
that?
So she, Sarah and the client were in another office within the building, and the interview was done through the web camera, and the officer was able to, I guess, print documents, and then the client would then bring, get the printout, and then had to place it in a certain container, for their applications. So that was very interesting.
Yeah, that just sounds wild and crazy, but I think it may be the wave of the future. Just they're testing some of these other methods of interviewing out. I mean, this is not a bad idea to interview via WebEx. I think it's totally fine. The same, I think everyone has discovered over the past year that we may not prefer video chat, Zoom meetings or whatever, but they are effective and they do work, So I kind of welcome the idea that USCIS office is trying out these different ways to conduct interviews. And, we had a client who she's a cancer survivor and still taking medication. And she was, she really didn't want to appear for her naturalization interview. She did, but she was very nervous about it. And she asked, are there any other ways? Is there any other way to get interviewed? But hopefully in the future, there will be different types of ways to interview people. I don't see any questions coming up on our live. Anything else, Dom, that we haven't talked about that we want to mention before we sign off here? I've got immigration legislation updates in Virginia. Next.
Really, I think we touched on the majority, and really, from what I could tell, the main topic of the meeting was going over what's happening in the Norfolk field office and reasons for why there's delays in case processing, from what I can tell.
Yeah, and we may not like the message, but again, I really, really appreciated the virtual meeting, and our field office director he did that in person before COVID shut down. So it's nice to know. I mean, it's good for us to be able to tell our clients something, and that we heard it right from the source. And does it mean their case is necessarily a problematic? It just means that they are having issues getting through it. And the good news, and we'll end on a good note, is that the hiring freeze is over, right? I mean, it's going to be over pretty soon, and they're going to be able to hire again, because there was a hiring freeze for over 2 years, I believe, even before COVID.
Correct. That is good news that Frank said they'll be able to hire more officers within the next 2 or 3 months. So hopefully they can speed up the officers training along so that there's less and less delays in the process.
Awesome. Well, guys, Caesar, Barbara, Dom, Cherish in the audience. She has a new party hat, so she's a new user to Clubhouse. Welcome. Really appreciate you guys coming and listening, and for those who tuned in through our live stream as well. We're gonna hopefully, if there are any other updates, we'll hop on and let you guys know. But for now, we are signing off, and thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye.